Welcome to Doyon. I appreciate those people coming out this evening for our second educational forum. I will say that unfortunately Dr. Blake is not able to be here and Sheila McAdams is unable to be here. So I am Sheila Haller, I'm the principal here at Doyon. Joann Cuff is representing the district office, and so we have district office questions, Joann. And I'll let the panel introduce themselves. They're educators from both Winthrop and Doyon. And the focus tonight is really the education forum, and so that we can talk about the education that presently happens in both of our buildings and what could happen with a new building or without a new building, what the future, for all of you. The slideshow that you're seeing is pictures from both Winthrop and Doyon as you took tours with the educators here. The same happened last month when people took tours of Winthrop. So those are pictures from both buildings. So I just want to let you know that. And, so I'm going to begin by having people introduce themselves, and then we'll go from the agenda.
Okay, I'm Susan Moore. I'm the literacy specialist here at Doyon. This is only year number 3, but I've been doing this for like 20 years. And I'm happy to be here, hoping we can get a new school someday.
Hi, I'm Maureen OConnell. I spent most of my 21 years here teaching 2nd and 3rd grade, but this past 3 years I've been lucky to be our first math specialist. So that's a new thing for Doyon, and it's been a wonderful addition.
I'm Lisa Nyland. I'm the ESL teacher at Winthrop.
Lisa Palance. I teach pre-K to 3rd grade music here at Doyon.
I'm Mary Plowden. I'm a special education teacher here for 5th grade. This is my 3rd year here.
Hi, I'm Whitney Cardew. I teach physical education here at Doyon, but had been teaching at both schools in a split position, so I'm familiar with both facilities.
Hi, I'm John Stafford. I'm the elementary school nurse at Winthrop. I'm also the nursing coordinator for Ipswich. So I can speak to health questions, health room questions, facilities questions, things like that.
And finally, I'm Joann Cuff. I'm the finance director for the district, and I attended Doyon School.
And your beautiful children.
Yeah, my beautiful children. Thanks for remembering.
I was there.
So we're just going to take from what's on the agenda. We can start there, and then teachers can share, and then we will have time if people have questions as we go along. We can do it that way. So as far as special education and general education, co-teaching and that experiences, someone want to take a stab?
Well, I'll start. I talked to some of the people that were on the tour with me that, we have a philosophy mainly of doing mainly push-in into the classroom. We try to pull out as little as possible because that's what the research shows is best for our students. So a lot of times we have, multiple adults in a classroom. And at this point now, I kind of feel, we like to split up into small groups. That way there we can do a lot of specialized instruction, slow it down, speed it up, whatever your needs are, and do various groupings for both kids in special education and for kids on the higher end. We try to differentiate all of our instructions in a co-teaching experience. So the size of the classrooms right now, as you can see, is it makes it hard to do 3 groups or 2 groups in a classroom right now. So that's kind of how I feel about that at this point. We also have some rooms where we are able to pull out and do that. You did see in the speech and language pathologist's office, it's really quite tight in there, and trying to have 2 groups going at the same time using speech is difficult. I'd say that's about it for that. Yeah.
Could I have one thing? Sure. I think Mary and I were talking about the design for the new building. The nice part about that is the rooms are significantly larger, and there's space so that 2 teachers or more could have a home base and store the things that they need to do the group work, and also have room to work with students in small groups. So it's designed for that kind of co-teaching. And I think we found, like, with more adults to help all of the students, everybody rises.
Right, exactly.
I can speak to Winthrop. At Winthrop, when we have, sometimes we have more than 2 teachers in the room. Right. So like if I go into a room that's co-taught, that means there are 3 adults in the room. and we're trying to do groups, oftentimes we're forced into the hallway, which isn't really conducive with kids coming and going from recess or specials or whatever. So it's really a challenge, and we've tried to carve out corners of hallways and things like that. But space is a real issue because of the pedagogy that tells us that kids learn better with more adults, more hands-on adults. The size of those classrooms just aren't conducive to what would really be ultimate for that education.
And I also was noticing too, even as I go through the building, looking at it, I was saying, new for 5th grade this year is we're teaching the matter unit, okay? So for the matter unit, I mean, you need a lot of liquids and condensing, and we have hot plates now that are part of the Common Core requirements this year. So that makes it a little harder for us with our storage space to actually even store all of that equipment. And then when we pull it out, I don't feel at this point right now it's safe to have multiple stations where groups of 3 can work at these stations. So what we're doing now is we're kind of, maybe 2 of us are doing it and we have a group around it, because we just don't have the room to have groups of 3 doing them at that point too. So some of the standards coming down from, DESE, we're not, we have to work with that. So I think we're doing really great things with what we're doing here, but it would be a lot easier and the kids would get a lot more hands-on in a bigger space.
Yeah. And if I could say one last thing, I think it's kind of maybe you think counterintuitive, like, well, if it's a bigger room or a bigger school, then it's going to be less personal. But actually, the bigger space is going to give us the opportunity to work in smaller numbers. And so the intimacy is there because of the relationships between the teachers and the students, not, kind of the size of the walls around the building, in my opinion.
And the differentiation that you can take place, so that all levels of learners get what they need and, and go to their fullest potential,
And to piggyback off that, if you notice in the newer sketches, let's say that there's, 3 or 4 classrooms and then there's a smaller pod, because there are still students who will need a small, quiet space to work. And at this point, we have some smaller spaces, but I think you saw on the tour, they're shared spaces. And sometimes if we're talking about a kindergarten student or a 1st grade student, they may be a little bit of a hike for them. So again, you'd rather spend time quickly moving fluidly into a close-by room for your 20 minutes to do a quick little group and then fluidly moving back. With regular ed and special ed kids, again, so we're not saying, okay, well, let's take a 10-minute walk to Mrs. Moore's room. The other thing that I think I noticed on the tour, which is little to do with instruction, but for our young ones, the bathroom is a long way. Like the 1st grade wing, for them to get to a bathroom, it's, and they're apt at it, and they're independent because of it, and we have eyes all, it's not, you don't have to worry about your children going to the bathroom, but
You want them to make it.
Right,
Yeah, we have the same thing in Winthrop. The bathrooms are literally on the other end from the kindergarten wing, the other end of the building. Also, there's a picture in here of a interventionist, Susan's colleague, teaching kindergartners in a hallway on the floor where kids are coming and going from recess. Because we have 2 floors at Winthrop. And so getting those kids upstairs takes half the time of your intervention. In the newer building, the plan is that we'll have these pull-out rooms where we can just take a group of kids into a room in between some classrooms, teach them, do whatever the activity is, whatever the intervention is, and put them back in the classroom, and not schlepping them up and down the stairs. And we don't schlep the kids up and down the stairs, particularly the kindergartners, but we end up having to teach in the hallway, in front of a door in the winter, so. For my position, for ELL, I personally don't have a space. I have a cubby. and I keep all my materials in there, and when I pull out, I have to find space. Hopefully the library's not being used, or I can find a place in the hallway, but it's not really effective for me, particularly for kids who are learning language, particularly if they don't know any English. I would love to have a place, and I'm hoping I will, where I have a whiteboard or visuals there. I can have kids writing or drawing, or in my situation now, I'm carrying everything around, and it's not, I could be way more effective if I had an actual space that was mine and that was theirs and had their own, drawings and writing and stuff up on the wall. It helps the kids feel more confident, and particularly when they're, strangers in the country and don't know the language, making them feel comfortable is 50% of the battle in my job. So, I do the best I can, and I have great relationships with my students, but I could do way better educationally, I think.
And I have to brag about Lisa and Peter, who is the ELL teacher here at Doyon. They collaborate a great deal, because when you're a singleton in a position, then how do you collaborate and what's best for the children? And all teachers have to take a state course in order to be familiar with ESL. But the nice thing is how much they get to collaborate, but it's always from building to building and phone call to phone call. There's a real plus to that relationship, where some of you, if you went to school here X amount of years ago, when I came 7 years ago, we had a ELL tutor, and that was the position. And because the population, everyone wants to live in Ipswich, because the population continues to change, it's such a pleasure to be able to have many cultural differences, but to have all of that available and the resources that they share back and forth. So that's another part of something that might be unknown to some of you as I look, who may have gone to school in one of Winthrop or Doyon, a change that we don't really hear about as often. So, anybody, as far as the primary, I know some of you work in the primary areas. I know we've talked special ed and co-teaching, and I'm not sure we talked primary and some of the advantages for our primary students and our intermediate students.
Right. So the primary students, when we toured, you saw, the size of a typical classroom, and we were talking about how so much is project-based and trying to have kids with their hands-on materials instead of hearing the teacher talk about it or just read about it. They want to do it. And I think the number one struggle for teachers is to find how to get everything out and have the students work with it, and then find a place to keep it so that they can do an ongoing project. There just isn't enough storage in our rooms. Back in the olden days, I always say to the kids, when I was in school, when the dinosaurs roamed the playground, and they don't laugh, which is kind of, it's true. But back then, there was all paper and pencil, and we don't want that for our kids anymore. We don't want them with worksheets, and when we have so much of the natural world around us and so many materials that we can use so kids can discover as they learn, we don't want to be telling them. So that just requires a different kind of teaching and a different kind of supply closet than what was available in the past. You saw all those added hooks in the hall. We used to have just the closets in the room. They were for the kids' little coats and backpacks. Now they have their things in the hall, and teachers are trying to store in the closets. And so for primary and intermediate, I think space to store materials, space to work in groups, lots of intermediate teachers having great projects in. There just isn't room for them to. You see kids sitting outside of 5th and 4th grade planning what they're going to do in front of the green screen, or what their next project, and they're sitting in the hall, and then we go by, and we're be this, me, sorry, right? You hear teachers saying, the hallways are not that wide, and then you add students' legs sticking out. So I said this before everybody came in, but I feel so proud of my colleagues at Winthrop School and here at Doyon School and how we just make it work. And I just can't even imagine the kind of crazy, awesome education that could go on if we had optimal conditions. I just kind of makes me shiver to think of the possibilities, so.
And I also, you know, people might worry about this, but I think the cross-pollination between the two cultures will be really great. I mean, we just had a meeting where we sat with all the 5th grade teachers over at Winthrop, and I just thought, wow, oh, they're doing this, and I think they're doing the same thing about us. Oh, they're doing that. So it's a nice collaboration. I think I'd look forward to working with more colleagues and more information and getting the best of their culture, the best of our cultures, and mingling them.
And you want to jump just, they were just intervention?
Yeah.
Do you want to-
I feel like we kind of covered intervention, because intervention maybe in some people's minds is automatically pulling kids out. And a lot of what we do in intervention is regular ed. You know, you might be in for a specific skill or a specific strategy we're working on, and then you might be out. It's more fluid, I think, than it appears sometimes. And again, this is kindergarten through 5th grade. So you want the kids to feel comfortable whether you're stretching them or whether you're, you know, intervening to, you know, a skill that they need practice with. So for me, having the option of doing more in the classroom, because I push it when I can and when it works for students. But I also know that there's a need sometimes for a smaller setting. And again, having the flexibility and being able to do both. And the materials. There's a, you know, being in literacy, I know we use a lot of technology these days, but the research still shows the little ones learn to read with real books. And any of you who love books still, you put the real book in my hand and I just get excited, okay? So that requires that you store some books and some decent books. So we were lucky enough we got some great books through a Payne grant that we're kind of sharing at different grade levels, which is wonderful. But there's no real place to store them, so I think on the tour people saw somewhere in carts out in the hallway, you know, and we're, you know, so again, I'm excited to have them, and it's great to have that money for the, you know, to build on, but it's the storage is always a challenge.
Right. And similarly for math, for these 3 years, I think at the last time I didn't really make it clear that that's for everybody in the school. The work that we do isn't special education. Of course, it's special, don't get me wrong. But then everything, you know, in Winthrop and Doyon is special. But I you know, have a likelihood of seeing every student in the building, whether it's just doing their baseline assessments, which are doing from kindergarten through 5th grade in math, and also seeing some extended groups once a week, which I love, kind of pushing kids to go a little further. Students come because they maybe need, as Susan said, a little extra time on a concept, but then you know, they're right back to the class, and being close by, I think, would just make it save all of that travel time, and also have us be able to reach more students if we were right there. And we're also a resource for our colleagues. So we have professional books, and I have math materials that I'm going to share with everybody in the school. So my room looks like Hoarders, but it's just the way it is.
Same with Petra and I are the same. We're resources for the teachers,
Right.
in addition to teachers.
So maybe we can go to specials, because you're all special, but maybe we want to make sure that
Really
music,
special.
art, library, any of those areas, and we're lucky enough to have people from specials areas. Sure. Whitney, you're on.
So I teach phys ed here. I did teach at Winthrop for a couple of years. I did the split position where I'd spend half a day there and then travel over here. I am thankful for every inch of space that I have, but we teach way differently now. And when I go back to like 5 or 6 years ago when I was an elementary school student myself, it was very different, and that was fine because I was an athlete. So great, we're playing baseball, good. Put me up at bat. I'll be the pitcher and the batter and the catcher and the outfielder all in one, and that was fine for me. But for the people that might not have had the confidence or the skill level at that point, it's been changed. No, but seriously, I think I have so many parents tell me that I hated phys ed, and I'm like, oh my God, that was right close to recess and lunch. It was the best. But nowadays, we're doing what's called a skill theme. So instead of teaching soccer, where there's one ball and maybe one or two kids touching it, or maybe the entire group of 5-year-olds, depending on what level they are, we're teaching kicking now, or we're teaching the actual skill. So what the whole idea is we're teaching the skill, and every child will have a piece of equipment. So even if you are maybe a little bit more timid, you don't even know that people aren't watching you because you've got your own ball and you're out there kicking yourself. But that leads to space. So if you looked in the gym, we've got lots and lots of equipment because I want to have every child have a soccer ball, or at least one per every 2. We need all of this equipment because that's how we're teaching, but it takes storage. We do a lot of stations, which I don't remember ever doing back when I was in school, but we'll take a gym class and we'll do, break it into 4 smaller groups, and we might have 3 groups doing something that they're well versed in, they can kind of take care of on their own. And then that allows me to have more of maybe a 1-on-5 with a smaller group. So it could be an assessment situation, or it could be working on a particular skill that we're focusing on. So again, that requires space. The cafeteria it's not fun. You're transporting equipment, and again, try schlepping 20 soccer balls down there during the middle of winter because you can't get outside. Not real fun. We're competing with the band that's on the stage, and I've got my music coming from my little small boom box, and I've got this, the horns on the stage, and it's can you be quiet? No, can you be quiet? And I mean, we try to work well together, but it's a tough situation. You've got folded up cafeteria tables that I don't even want to get into, that, don't run. It's phys ed, don't run. Okay, don't run. Don't run. So there are some drawbacks there. Even in our gym, I don't have any flat surfaces in there where, I loved throwing a ball against a wall when I had to play by myself. No one would play with me. But there's nothing flat because it's like there's the rock wall, which is wonderful, but then there's storage in the back, and then there's all the stuff down the sides, and then there's the padded wall here. So it's not an ideal setup that way. Again, I am appreciative of every inch, but I would love more inches. We've got basketball hoops that are out, which they take up space. The heat, or lack of, as I have in my notes. We had one winter that it was 49 to 51 degrees in there, and I'm not just talking during a cold snap. It was horrible. Kids would come wearing snow jackets, and that's why I dress in layers all the time still. If the heat is on, I think it's just the sound. I don't think you get any heat. And ask Sheila, 5 minutes of 9, whenever my class starts, I run in, go into the room, and I shut them off because you can't teach over the sound. So that, they get warmed up quite a bit, but it's just, again, it's not real.
Optimal?
Yes, optimal is not the right word.
No.
It's not us.
Right.
Our outside, I think here, we've got a pretty nice setup where we've got the front yard pretty accessible, not really conducive to 2 classes side by side because of the way we use. Usually we're needing more space, and that's why we go outside. Backyard is wonderful, but it's long to get there, which cuts down on their time, and I'd rather have them moving around. So I think that, like everyone else has said, with more up-to-date facilities, we have very little technology because we only have like 2 outlets. So we don't have any kind of smart boards, which we would use. Phys ed has changed. And I'd like to keep up with it. We try our best, but again, I think we could definitely use some more space and some more updated facilities.
Yeah, and same that everybody's been talking about. We're dealing with the same situation, and like Whitney and some other teachers, I've taught at both Winthrop and Doyon, but I also teach band at the middle school, so I have the experience there of knowing what it's like to have a dedicated space where all your stuff is there, and you go in and you can teach, and you're not constantly setting up and breaking down. we're fortunate here, we have a beautiful music room. I did brag about it to my group. It is, it's beautiful, and it's in the right spot. It doesn't bother anybody during MCAS anymore, so, you know, it used to be up at the top of the hallway, and we couldn't really do much in music when there was MCAS days. So I think the biggest challenge, though, for both Winthrop and Doyon is the band, the orchestra, and the chorus situations. Here at Doyon, the stage is basically the classroom for the band when they have group lessons. But again, it's not just space for just the band. That's a multi-purpose room. You can't teach during lunch, or I think he does, though.
He does.
I think he has one lesson during lunch this year, which is a huge challenge. You know, it's just that curtain that you're pulling. And then when band is being taught, he has to set up every single chair, every single stand beforehand. The kids come in, they have their band class. Then he has to clean it all up and put it away for whatever's coming next, a gym class or lunch, or, you know, if it's picture day in September, they're bumped from the stage. If there's an assembly in the cafeteria, you're bumped that day. Marissa Scarano, who teaches strings, teaches in Sheila's office. She teaches in the hallway, and she also teaches in the music room. So, like you, she's got all her stuff. She's got bags and extra violins and extra strings and an extra bow. You know, you have to really think about what it is you need for every different space. And I made the analogy at the Winthrop. It's like having to move your office, you know, 3-4 times a week. Well, that's your desk, but it's not just your desk. And you can have some stuff there, but if you need your other stuff for this stuff, it's a really complicated thing for them to have to do. And right now this year, we do, if you went in the cafeteria, we have those little steps in front of the stage, which they use for chorus during performances. But chorus is held in the music room here, and it's an entire grade. So the entire 4th grade goes into the music room for chorus once a week, the entire 5th grade. And Winthrop does have the proper choral risers, but again, same. They have to be, you know, rolled out, set up. The kids have chorus on the risers, then they're all put away. And it's really difficult to do it on those little steps. I mean, we're glad to have them for concerts, but it's really difficult to have kids sitting on these tiny little steps. It's not good for singing, it's not good for behavior issues, and I mean the music room with 60-odd kids is a challenge in itself. But it's a lack of space. It really is, and it really hinders what we can do.
I was telling my tour group that in 5th grade, all but 2 students take an instrument. So that's, I think we have 66 kids, and so I think there might be 10 in your office doing strings, so the other 56 are on the stage doing band.
And for strings, if I have a meeting, we planned it the day I have admin meeting once a week, so that's where strings has their biggest group, because I'm gone for 2 hours that day. But then, because she has all these different groups, I then move back into, those of you who remember Dr. Cooper, in his little office, I move in there where my administrative assistant is. So I shift into that, because you know what, we all feel it. So sometimes people go, wow, Sheila, you're so lucky, your office is so big. It's also the largest place for us to have a meeting with more than 6 people, because there's no other place other than, when we have any type of meeting, conferences, anything, they're held in my office, because obviously this during the day is used for the library media. So that's why we've done a lot of, I will be so pleased at both buildings how creative we've learned to be.
Right.
I know no one is here for art, but I can say if you're an elementary parent at Winthrop or Doyon, we just experienced the art show. It's the highlight of both Winthrop and Doyon, and the proudest moment for both of our art teachers, sharing a piece or more than one piece from every student from kindergarten all the way up. And it's really, I have students from high school who come back and go, one of my favorite days. So we just had that last week, and the week before was Winthrop's. And so when you walk through, it's just like when you're having company over. Mrs. Blum stayed until 5 o'clock this afternoon to make sure you'll see all the beautiful artwork. It's like having your house cleaned up before company came. She said, I want people to see the beautiful pieces. But I'm sure when you took the walk around the building, you saw that the kiln is in where the school psychologist is, and is it also with the storage closet, which is the only place we have to put chairs. And It used to be also the teacher's professional library was in that same space, but thanks to Susan, whether she had a choice or not, that's where we've moved that into her classroom that she shares with ESL, which she also shares with the copy machine because we have no place else to put a copy machine. So, but art is as beautiful, and you can't have more talented art teachers in both buildings. And what they produce. And so you come to the art show, and truly, when I say it's like having company and it's your proudest moment. But they would be here, and I said, Linda, you were out all last week, and all the nights that they put those kiln, because it's only one kiln in each building, so you can't fire all those pieces without both of those ladies spending nights, weekends, dropping by and doing that. So that's one of the topics of art. Library, obviously, this is our library here at Doyon. We're lucky enough to have enough space to have our makerspace, or we call it our STEAM studio on this side. It's all the up and coming as far as all the hands-on learning. The same thing with Winthrop in their library. Is in a smaller space for those people who took the tour or read Winthrop. The combination and the plans for the new library can be very magnificent if you look at them, but those are the specialist classrooms that we have. Very happy for all the funds that we've had for technology. And when I think of library media specialists, I just wanted to say, as far as technology in both buildings, we're fortunate to have iPads for almost all our younger children and Chromebooks for our older students. And a lot of that came from the override and BEPI grants. But if you notice as you walk through both buildings, those carts are all the spaces in that hallway because there's no place to put those carts. And that's one of the, we use technology every day in so many creative ways. So that was just part of my notes as far as making sure we touched all the specialists. The other two things that are on the bullets were Schoolwide. Oh,
well, actually,
sorry, John.
I was just going to hit on, since we're talking about small spaces, I'm sure you've seen the nurse's office here. I'm lucky over at Winthrop. Mine's a little bit bigger, so Mr. Krieger, our wonderful new nurse here at Doyon, Mr. Krieger's office is about 150 square feet. Mine's about 200. Neither are really adequate to the task. We both have one bed each, so if there's two sick kids, too bad. Only one gets to lie down. It's crowded. There's not a lot of privacy. I'm going to go ahead and say there's no privacy, really. Infection control is an issue because it's such a small space and everybody's sort of moving through it. So if you get a chance and you look at the plans for the new school, if this ends up being what we do, the nurse's office is 750 square feet. It has 3 individual treatment bays that are separate from one another. You can draw curtains across them. So it's better for privacy, it's better for infection control, and it's better for storage. I don't know if you've heard this, but space is kind of an issue. It really is the final frontier here in Ipswich. There's just no place to put anything. When they built these schools, they built Winthrop in the 50s and Doyon in the 60s. I don't know what school nurses did then, but they didn't do the stuff we do now. And they didn't have the equipment that we have now, and things like defibrillators and ice machines and just things that didn't exist then. That we take for granted here, and we're very fortunate. We have nurses in every school, and they're all well trained, and we take great care of the kids. But we could do better if we had a better space. That's my spiel.
One of the other things was school-wide events. People want to talk about school-wide events. Some of this picture here is a school-wide event that just went by.
You can see the tables. The tables are
we have a holiday sing-along. It's been a tradition here at Doyon for at least 20 years, if not more. And Winthrop has the same. Winthrop has to have the fire department there. I know they're outside of the building. The department is there, but they have to make sure, as far as code, because in order to have everyone in one space, we just make it at this point if we put only students and staff. So then I have the families that will be like, can't I come and can't I come? Sorry, we can't have any more people. So there's a lot of things where we aren't able to as far as school-wide events. So I don't know if anyone else wanted to speak of the many things that.
It's just when we gather together, that's when we feel like, one big family. So it's important to be able to gather.
So at this point, the last one was storage. I don't think I have to say that one. I don't think anybody had anything else. So at this point, I want to thank the panel who came out this evening to share some of the educational part of it, and I'm not sure if people have any questions.
Just my biggest question, I'm seeing all the leaks on this, I'm seeing leaks. I have a kid with asthma. How much mold are we talking in these buildings?
Well, we do have a health and air quality who come they come almost twice a year right now.
Okay.
To make sure that, but and what we do is, when the radiator breaks in this building, same thing in winter, we are calling the electrician and they're coming and fixing. We have to do it as soon as possible before it leaks onto the rug.
Yeah.
So, and then service master, that is something that we have a 1-800 service master. They're here often. I know the people who come because they're here often, because they're scraping everything out of the carpets. And because people have asked that question a number of times, that is why they do come twice a year.
And it's a
at this
very
point.
good question. We actually didn't, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we just had this come up at Winthrop the week before vacation. We had to move one of the
An
first grade
entire
classrooms
classroom.
out of their classroom because there was mold found in the heating unit, I think it was, and so they had to.
Yeah, it was all in
clean
the
it all
wall.
out. And, you know, that's an issue that we think about with these buildings. We've all heard of sick building syndrome. You know, these are old buildings, and they weren't built to the standards that we expect now as far as materials and mold proofing and being able to resist that sort of stuff for the kids with asthma, the kids with respiratory issues.
I know the Page School
Yeah.
in West Newbury just had a huge,
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
right.
6 months of relocation.
Yeah.
The other thing that at Winthrop, what they've done now is they've used carpet tiles, carpet squares, so that the custodial staff can just take them up and put fresh ones down if something were to happen, that, you know, so
These
we
are
can-
squares.
Yeah, these are squares up
They
and all
can
of
take
them.
them up, they can put new ones down. So
There are
that's
no
what
longer
they do.
parts for the heating and ventilation in
Right.
both the buildings. So
In
when,
either of them.
what happens is, those parts don't exist, so what, if a
It is
if-
funny.
if a heating unit goes down, they come in, and then they make those new parts for that, to make sure, because it's not, and so they,
Well, we've had a period of time, I don't know if it was this winter or last winter, Carl, you can remember, that where it was like 50 degrees in the library for like a week.
Yeah.
I mean, wouldn't even bring kids in there to work. We would have service them outside.
Even
We
though
were
the other
wearing
classrooms that
jackets
are,
and
you know,
gloves.
110, you know, that, yeah,
Yeah,
it's
it's
feast or famine.
kinda
It's-
wonky.
yeah.
Yeah.
In my little corner room, first the heat was broken, and then it was fixed, and it was so noisy that I do what Mrs. Cardew does. I toast up the room, and then when the kids come in, I turn it off. And then about halfway through, someone will say, "Could I go get my jacket?" You know, so during the really cold time, it is an issue, but.
yes.
I just had a question. I was wondering if you knew what the administration would be like in the new school, like, or would both principals be at the new school, or would there be different?
Titles have not been determined, and that's a conversation that school committee and superintendent are having. But as far as Sheila and I both taking a leadership role, we will both have a leadership role. As far as what anybody's title would be, there would be two types of leaders. And I'll be honest with you, I'm one of those people, I might be principal today. If my title was to change to something different, as long as I was involved, the title doesn't matter. But there would be leadership in the building, and there would be, however that is. But that hasn't been truly determined. It's a conversation as we move forward. But Jill and I work very close together. It's interesting, we both have the same name. And, you know, so that helps to not confuse anyone. And I know when I was interviewed many years ago, someone said, "I don't think we could have two Sheilas." And not very many people know a lot of Sheilas, but I will tell you, it's like almost having a sister. I spend a great deal of time with Sheila. We spend many mornings, we're talking to each other on the way in, because once we're in, we're on. So we do a lot of curriculum work together, you know, from preschool placement, preschool screenings that we've had, and now we have kindergarten screening next week, to shared staff, to doing budget things together, to writing grants together. Sheila and I work very closely together for the last, I've been here for 7 years, Sheila's been principal there for over 9 years, and you know, has been a teacher there prior to. So we have a good working relationship, and so however that turns out to be, I'm feeling very confident that we both have the same vision, that what we want is what's best for children. We do that every single day now, and we'll continue to do that. And we also make sure we hire the best of staff to be able to provide for that. So, yes.
Speaking of hiring,
Yeah.
Have you found the conditions to be hindrance at all when you're trying to fill up a position or in terms of retention?
Well, I will tell you that people who get hired in Ipswich tend to stay in Ipswich. I'm very fortunate that most of my staff leave due to retirement or moving, or they don't have people who tend to leave because of, I will say personally, and anyone else can speak up, there's something about Ipswich that makes it a really special place to work. And many people also go into education and then they come back and they work. We have a number of staff who went through the Ipswich schools and now work in both of our buildings. So I mean, that is a real plus.
Right, but.
Would
when
people go
some-
someplace
When
different?
some do retire, is it hard to bring in the new blood? Like, do they sit in one of the interview rooms and say,
No.
I think the people who love education. And
Okay.
when I had a second grade position a couple of years ago, over 275 people applied for that one position. So people apply because the nice thing about people who go into this career.
Can
Can I speak to
Yeah, so, this is my third year here, and when I came in, when I sat, you come in, it's very intimidating, there's like 5 of you around a table, and they're all interviewing you, and I just knew right away, like, this was the place I wanted to be because of the people, and because it's very student-centered learning, and the child comes first, and that's what really draws me to be here and to stay here, honestly.
And-
So it's the people is more important. That's what makes this whole system work. And that's why we do the wonderful things we do, quite honestly. In the conditions that we're in, we're able to do it,
It's a family. I mean, I think both schools are a family, and if you talk to any of the staff that has been hired who have worked in other districts, they say this is like Disneyland to work in. So the building, although the facility is challenging and hard, it's the people really we lift
It
each
would be a
other
lot
up and
harder
the
if
kids.
not for the people.
We're child-centered, totally,
Yeah.
all of us are. And, yes.
Do you think the building will change how you feel as a family?
I don't think so. It's not about,
I'm
like,
sorry, what was the
it's,
question? What was it? I
Do you
didn't
think the building will change that feeling of family?
No, I
it's the
related to
connection
like,
with the children.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but I just related to like my own family. If I move to a brand new house, am I gonna have a better or worse relationship with my family? I hope not. You know what I mean? I do it because I love my family. I love my children. I'm not gonna move to a bigger, nicer house and say, oh, I don't like my children now. We do it because we love the children.
I also think there's a lot of time with, we've been very fortunate the last couple of years with professional development. And so you don't send, well, sometimes you do, but you don't necessarily send your entire team to some type of professional development, but they will come back and share what they've learned. And I work very closely with the other 2 phys ed teachers, and it's every Thursday we're going back and forth to one school or the other. So that we can meet, because we really share resources. And they've just come back from a workshop, so they'll tell me what they've learned, and I've read this book, and we do. I would think it would be so much more convenient if we were housed together. And I just think that there would just be that it's more resources. Your resources are right there versus on the other side of town. So I do think there's something to be said for, a nice new larger building would be wonderful. But I think the opportunity to have all of us together, I think the sharing would be a little bit easier. Granted, we have technology and we have, texting and all that stuff, but I do think it'd be nice to have somebody just right there.
And with that cross-pollination I said before, there are gonna be bumps in the road, right? But when you have those bumps and you have different ideas coming together, yeah, there's gonna be a little turbulence, but what comes out of that is something really good, right? You're gonna be more innovative, we're gonna have more ideas to work together towards in different visions. I think that can be really, really powerful.
And I think our makerspace speaks to that, because I've worked in other districts, this is my 3rd year here, and to have the backing of administration when you have a new idea, and where's it gonna go, and what's it gonna look like, and how are we gonna be on the cutting edge, I mean, this is huge, like, just
Put up the curtain.
that we found the space for it and we got some training around it. We didn't just throw it together, you know.
And in our building, in our library, our teeny tiny library, we're challenged, our librarian has started doing podcasting with the kids and the teachers, and it would be great for her to have a real podcasting room, like a room where she could do it, so that she doesn't have to go, shh, they're recording, shh, you know. So we have this whole setup, and the kids are loving it, the teachers are loving it, the teachers are doing podcasts for their students. And, you know, we've found a lot of really exciting things to do. Our green screen is a big green plastic tablecloth that we put up against some bookshelves, but we make it work. But, you know, it would be nice not to have to make it work all the time. I mean, making it work is fun the first couple of times you do it, and after a while it gets a little old, so, you know.
I think to answer your question, the togetherness would be great, because these are friends and colleagues that we've been working with for a number of years. And some of the challenges would be out of the way, so I can't imagine that it wouldn't even foster more one Ipswich, like one feeling of community, you know.
Yes.
I've got two questions. First, what's the current enrollment at Doyon?
408 students.
There's 482 students right here now?
408.
408.
408.
Oh, okay.
There has been 480 students, just a number of years ago. We had 480 students 7 years ago.
Yeah, that was the peak enrollment, I believe, in 2005. Because there was a space reallocation plan done by the previous superintendent, designed based upon 350 students. Was he out of his mind in 2014 when he came up with that number?
That was the demographics that was done by a committee. So,
In 2014?
I believe.
So you've had, actually your enrollment has increased since?
No, we were at, when they do that demographics, it's kindergarten through 5th grade, because they don't talk about they don't count the preschool, and currently we have 30 children in preschool, 15 in the, so that's, you take off that 30, because we have 15 in our 3-year-old program and 15 in our 4-year-old program. So if you, and yes, we have had 23 students. We have people moving in, moving out. So it's not really that far off when you take the preschool off that number.
Secondly, the original plan was to renovate and expand or replace Winthrop School and add student population there to take pressure off of this school. And that was, as everybody knows, that was cast by the wayside. What I'm concerned about is when the question gets asked, how is this new school going to be administered? It's always answered by yourself or the superintendent, the administrative people. We haven't figured that out yet. Let's talk about that later, you know. And this has been brought up even last fall during the planning process when they were doing the design of the building and all. And the question I have is are we designing 2 schools within one building? What are the teachers? You must have thought about this a little bit. I'd be interested to hear what the teachers think would be the optimal way of administrating a 700 student initially school population of elementary school students. How would you have a 700 student assembly, for example? Are you all concerned about the logistics of that and your ability to administer that and not have to worry about moving the population around efficiently within this larger facility and have that take away from your educational experience or your educational capabilities? I guess that's something that seems to be being kicked down the road. And
well, I think, I will say, I've been, you can do that, but I was going to say, remember, we've been in this process for a long time, and once there's a vote, then we have the next set of process to go through. And I'm not sure if anyone in the panel, I know some people have, we do go to other schools who have larger populations than the roughly 400 in both of ours. We've been going to different schools in the last couple of years. So we have colleagues within the state that we can also, how is it working in those places? So we've had those dialogues. The Bancroft School in Andover is one of them. They're over 600 something students. So those are some of the people we've been talking to about how, so we're not pioneering this all by ourselves. But
And you-
happy to have all of these people have their input on that. But I just want to let you know, it's not, we're not answering the question. It's part of the work in progress.
It would be helpful for people who are voting to have some more tangible examples of how it might be addressed,
Right.
that's all. I think that's a fair question to be asked sooner rather than later and have an answer or answers or a menu of answers as to what's.
Well, I
Can I, Sheila, can I comment on
Sure.
that? Do you mind? I mean, I don't want to take up the teacher's time, but just a couple things might be helpful. One is, many of those studies have already been done. You may remember that probably 6 or 8 months or so ago, Sheila put together teams. Some of the folks on the panel were on those teams. And one of the charges was to look at models for organizing the school. And eventually, the teacher teams came to the school committee, you could watch the meeting, and reported on the different models they looked at and which ones they preferred. They actually, at the time, were talking about a multiple house model. I think 3 houses at the time was something they were really interested in, but they presented a couple different approaches. And I think the superintendent has said that that requires more conversation, and he's looking forward to more of that kind of discussion with the teachers driving the conversation about the right way both to configure it, to group the grades, but also to think about the administration. Second thing to say is just last school committee meeting, the superintendent presented a summary of these 2 issues, looked at the configuration models that are under consideration, and also looked at the administrative models. So we should share the presentation. If you look at that meeting, you'll get a nice summary of what the status is, what models we're looking at, and the sort of process they're going to go through to make a final decision about exactly what the administration and configuration of the school ought to look like.
Teachers?
Well, I'm going to go back to your question about keeping people in Ipswich and retention. One of the reasons that teachers love to teach in Ipswich and stay in Ipswich even when there's a drip over their desk, I'm not talking about myself, but there could be a drip over my desk. We stay because there's a lot of value on teacher direction about the way things work, and our voice is very, very much a part of everything. When I came to Ipswich, I didn't know if my long-term sub position in Gloucester was going to continue, and I applied, and by the time I had my interview, I knew I had a job in Gloucester, but I sat at the table and I just thought, well, this is where I want to be. We were already talking about the curriculum frameworks. Back in Gloucester, they just passed out the books. Here, there were already teams looking at vertical alignment and all teacher-driven, and teacher leadership is a big piece of what we do here. So I would say I am not worried because I have faith in the resources of my colleagues who figure out bigger problems than, how to walk to an assembly. Given the hallways that we're going to have in this new school, I think that we're going to be able to figure it out. We dismiss these students who used to maybe come all in buses. Now we do it to cars, and it's not ideal the way that the cars have to come and loop through, but we figure things out and we make it work. So I guess I would say have faith in the educators that the town has hired because, we will do it in a way that will be best for kids. And I wouldn't say right now what I want because we are all part of the team that work together and we try to make those kind of joint decisions. So it might sound like a little bit of a evasive answer to you, but I think it's more respect to teachers that they're not going to say, this is the way it's going to be, this is who's going to be the principal, this is who's going to be the whatever else there is. It's waiting to be a little bit more organic. Once we know that we have the go-ahead for this, then planning with teachers will be, a big project. Do you agree?
To jump on there, just to add on to that, part of the process, Carl, was also throughout this whole design, they met with all of us. We were given time by our principals to go over to the central office and meet with the architects where they were like, Whitney, what's your dream? It's like, oh, I love this, and I was with my two counterparts. I wasn't just the mouthpiece for phys ed, I was with Mark and Anthony, and the three of us had met already because we were told in advance, and this was our opportunity to voice some of the things that we wanted, and that was, every grade level, every area, so I think we've already had input into what we would like, but not necessarily the architectural piece of, so taking our wish list, how are you gonna put this together? So I think that they've been very respectful of what our desires are as educators and what our level of expertise is, because I'm not an expert architect, but I do feel pretty confident in the area that I teach, and I know what I'd like to see. And they listened, and it was in there, and it was tweaked, and we went back, and there were some things that they had lopped off and things that they added on. So I think that we've been part of the process.
And there's a 35-page educational plan. It's on the website. But that was the input of Winthrop, Doyon, and community members that we worked on for 2 years. So that whole plan is not we'll just put pieces together, and it's been changed, we've tweaked it and moved it, and when if we change something on the plan that something has to be smaller or something's bigger, we kept looking at it. So we were like, when do you take the word draft off of it? Well, it'll always, every day in education it changes. If I teach 4th grade, because I'm teaching this group this year in 4th grade, they may not be the same students I have the following year. You don't just teach the same way. And I think that goes along with the plan of how will we move things around.
And
I think that's...
And from my perspective, and of course, you get a little nervous, change is hard, right? But I have faith that because this district and, here at Doyon where I teach, we're definitely child-oriented, and I know whatever decisions we're gonna make and that we're gonna be part of is all gonna be based on what's best for the kids. And I know we wanna try to keep a small school feel, we wanna have it to be a nice community that's not gonna be this huge, I went to a high school with 4,000 students in Medford, it's not gonna, there are ways to make it be smaller, some ways to make it intimate, and my fears have been subdued because I feel we'll always put the kids first, and you can't go wrong that way.
Yeah. Well, I want to be respectful of, being 10 past 8. Like I said, we'd be here for an hour. I'm happy for people to stay and answer any more questions that people have. Just wanted to, and we also have what we call a parking lot with every meeting that we go to. If there's any questions that you don't want to ask in front of everyone, you can feel free to put it there or, yes.
I'm sorry, I have one question.
Yeah.
Is this slideshow available online? Can it be accessed by everybody? Because there's a lot of people that aren't here tonight that really should see these photos. It's really good.
Sure, I'll be happy to have that taken care of on the school, on the district website. So.
Okay, thank you.
No problem. Well, I want to say thank you to everyone for being here.
Thank you.